Guys, we are back with the Screen Team, and we've got a very, very special review for you now. Can I take you to a world that's got police officers? Can I take you to a world that's got replicants? Can I take you to a world that's got a blind guy who looks really, really creepy, and he creates, what is it, androids?
Synthetic food?
Yes.
Essentially?
Yes. Can I interest you in a movie like this? If you're interested, it's Blade Runner 2049. And to join us with the review, we've got Jamie. Jimmy, first off, Blade Runner. Before we get into this new film, were you a fan of the original?
Oh, definitely.
Why?
Because it rocked. Well, I was a teenager when the first movie came out, and I wasn't familiar with the source material, but they extrapolated so much that the source material was kind of...
Didn't really matter?
To a degree, it didn't matter.
Yeah.
It was more like concepts and things like that they took from it and then expanded on.
What was it called? Something about goats and dreams and stuff? What was it called?
Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?
I was close.
By Philip K.
I
Dick.
was close.
Yeah, you're really close. But even the term Blade Runner didn't come from that story. It came from another sci-fi story. So, they took these pieces and put it all together and then, expanded on that.
Yep.
And one of the things I've always thought was interesting about the first film was it had a lot of style visually, especially because there wasn't a lot to the story. It was essentially, here's a guy that's a Blade Runner and he retires these replicants and go.
Yeah.
And that was pretty much it. I was like, oh, okay. So it was kind of like a trippy action film, more or less.
And the music was cool.
Yeah.
I love the music in that one, even though I'm not too crazy about the film. But this film, I loved. But and I'm going to contradict myself here, so I apologize for that. But this film, you got the same feel of the original in this sequel. It felt like you hadn't left the world, the Blade Runner world. To me.
Oh, totally. Yeah, and I guess that's kind of something that you run into when you set something in the future, whether it's post-apocalyptic or it's like super science, like everything's so technical or whatever.
Yeah.
It's easy for it to seem fake, and they did really, they expanded on the vibe and the look. One of the things I thought was interesting is in the first movie, the people speak, some of them speak like a street language that's like a combination of Japanese and German and in this movie that has shifted more towards like Russian and things like that, and even some of the imagery that they use, with these big,
those were cool
lighted billboards on the
awesome.
buildings and things, So that was kind of neat that they pushed it a little further because it's 30 years later than the first film, and you have to think, well, influences and other things like that would kind of come into play. So I thought that was pretty cool that they didn't just rehash what was done and just make it prettier.
So you like that? Did you like the entire movie?
I did like the entire movie.
Yeah.
The I guess the main plot of the film where
Ryan
Gosling's character Kay, where he's his quest or whatever you want to call it, it felt like the whole movie rested on that idea that he had to go find this one person or whatever, but there was so much other stuff that was woven into that plot. People talk about the length of the film is almost 3 hours.
It is,
but you don't really notice it, or I didn't really notice it, even going in knowing, this is gonna be a pretty long film.
Right.
It's not that you kind of get lost in it. There's enough story there, and then there's enough visually that you're like, wow, check it out, look what they did. So I really got a kick out of it. It's definitely something I'll add to my collection when it comes out.
Very cool. Visually, I want to give props to cinematographer Roger Deakins, who, if you've seen Shawshank, he did the cinematography on that. Have you seen No Country for Old Men? Have you saw the new James Bond film Skyfall? Yeah. This guy is he's top notch, and I thought the cinematography in this film was just as good, maybe even better than those films.
Yeah. And Dennis, the director of this, a lot of people have the misconception that it's still Ridley Scott.
Right, he's just a producer.
He just produced it and helped get it done. But Dennis, is he the director from Arrival?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, he is.
All right.
Yeah, he did Arrival, and I think he did Prisoners and something else. He's a great director too,
Yeah.
man. Very, very good. Harrison Ford, his grumpy butt shows up in this film. What'd you think about him?
I liked it. I was kind of curious.
That's not how Blade Runners work.
Well, I was kind of curious how they were going to reintroduce him into the narrative because, for all anybody knew, 30 years in the future, he's dead or whatever. And they kind of allude to that fact that that's what people think is like, oh, this dude's dead.
Yeah.
I'm not spoiling anything by saying that, but it's kind of neat the way that they brought him back in and then like made him a part of that initial plot that was that Gosling's character is on.
Jared Leto, he's a method actor. He's kind of crazy. What'd you think about him?
I thought, he's probably the perfect person to play that character.
But you know who Denis wanted to play that character?
Who?
David Bowie.
Oh, now that would have been neat.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been really neat. And actually probably would have been a little more appropriate age-wise because, they have a little scroll, the little setup story thing at the beginning that talks about the replicants and this is what happened 30 years ago. And so, it probably would have worked a lot better with an older person playing that character. But, I mean, Leto was still, creepy enough. And
I was
and
surprised he
interesting
was
enough.
only like in a couple of scenes. I thought he would have been in the film more.
Well, yeah, and it wasn't really necessary, I guess, because that was part of the way they played that character, I guess, is like he had to be the creepy guy behind the scenes.
Yeah.
You're wondering what he's up to. Have you seen the little short film?
No.
There's a neat little short film that they did that goes along with this movie, and it's him meeting with, I guess they're like government officials or something like that, and they're talking about the replicants, and he shows them why his replicants are better than the original ones. It's pretty cool. I definitely won't spoil that because it's just teeny tiny, like a 5-minute film, but it's worth checking out if you're going to go see this movie.
I love the music in this film. My only issue was we saw it in the theater, and my goodness, it was loud, man. There was distortion coming out of the speakers.
One of my biggest pet peeves about our local theater is they don't adjust the volumes depending on the crowd size.
Yeah.
They have state-of-the-art systems. They can turn that volume down. And I'm not trying to be the grumpy old man, but it's like,
I will.
I mean, well, yeah.
I was like, my poor ears.
But it's like all that synth music. Yeah, it was a little much in certain parts, but it's supposed to kind of like make you edgy, I think, to a degree, especially when he's like out in the desert and stuff. So, but yeah, it was a little loud, but that's probably strictly on our theater.
So Blade Runner 2049, do you have to watch the original, and do you have to enjoy the original to enjoy this one?
Wow. That's a good question. It probably wouldn't hurt to see it, essentially because, Harrison Ford's in the first one, and you get the whole story about him
Early on.
in the first movie. And then when they talk about him, Deckard in this movie, in the new one, they talk about him enough and set it up where you don't really necessarily have to see the first one. Because like I said, the first one it got by on a lot of style and visuals and things like that. There really wasn't a lot of movie or a lot of plot to it, story-wise. Just enough to move it along. And it's interesting because now there's like 4 different versions of the original film. And depending on which one you watch, you get a slightly different aspect of it, because like one of them has these little voiceovers from Deckard, and that's the theatrical release that everybody pretty much saw when it first came out. That did see it saw the one with the voiceovers. Well, then the director Ridley Scott later on went and did. There's a director's cut, and then there's the one they call the final cut.
Which one do you like best?
I like the final cut, because like they changed a couple of scenes around and expanded a couple of little things, but they got rid of the voiceover. And you don't need it.
Yeah.
It really only just kind of, it's there to fill space, I felt like. It tells you a little bit about the character because he talks about his ex-wife and things like that. But you didn't really need it to know the whole story of that first movie.
All right, Blade Runner 2049, you're in.
Yeah.
I'm in. You should be in too. See it in theaters too, because it's gorgeous. Gorgeous. Jamie, thank you so much, man. We will have more reviews coming your way next right here on the Screen Team.